So welcome everyone. I'm Brett Thielen. I'm the science director at the Harris Center for Conservation Education, and I'm joined here by Susie Spickle, the community programs director. Um, so I'm sure many of you have been on Zooms before, but we just always like to remind people of a few things. One is that we are recording this talk tonight to post to our YouTube channel for anyone who isn't able to attend live or just wants to watch it again. So if you don't want to appear in the video, the safest thing to do is to turn your video off. Um, we do have closed captioning enabled, and you can decide for yourself whether you would like to see those captions or not. If you go down to the bottom of your Zoom screen, you might see a button that has a CC, or you might see more or three little dots, and that's usually where you can find the toggle for showing or hiding subtitles. And also to keep things flowing, we have made it so that you cannot unmute yourselves, but if we do encourage questions and on-topic conversation in the chat. So if you have questions for Helen and Mike Dutton, our speakers, you can please feel free to put them in the chat, and then Susie and I will keep an eye on that, and we'll pose those questions during the Q&A portion at the end of the evening. Is there any other Zoom things that I have missed, Susie, that you can think of, or Michelle? No. Okay, great. So I'll give just then a really quick introduction just to the Harris Center, and then we'll get on to the main event here. But in case anyone is new to the Harris Center, I always like to share a little bit about who we are. We are a nonprofit based in the Monadnock region of Southwest New Hampshire, and we help people fall in love with the natural world. And we do this in 4 ways. One is land protection for people and wildlife alike. We've now protected more than 26,000 acres in our neck of the woods, and much of that's open for hiking and birding and other recreation. We coordinate conservation research projects on our conserved land and throughout the region, including some really fun community science projects. Much of that is focused on wildlife as well. And then really at the heart of everything we do is education for all ages, from babies in backpacks to residents of retirement communities and all points in between. So if you live in the Monadnock region and have a young person in your life, there's a very good chance that they've spent some time outside with a Harris Center naturalist. We work in almost 40 schools. And then we also have an incredible calendar of events for the general public, more than 150 every year, most of which are free of charge. And it's everything from Zooms like this to film showings to guided birding outings and hikes and paddles. So if you're new to us, I would encourage you to check us out and sign up for more events. And on that note, I do want to tell you about 2 more Zoom events coming up in November that I think would be of interest to you all. The first one is on Thursday, November 6th at 5:30. It's What We Know About Bird Flu with Dr. David Needle, who's a senior veterinary pathologist at the New Hampshire Veterinary Diagnostic Laboratory. So he'll be kind of giving us the current lay of the land with avian influenza. And then on Wednesday, November 19th at lunchtime at noon, we have a lunch and learn about monarchs and the monarch migration with Judy Fink and Emily Rubel, who traveled down to Mexico to see the wintering monarchs. And they're going to share some of their experience and let you know what you can do to help protect the most iconic of butterflies. So we'll put the links in the chat if you'd like to sign up for either of those. And with that, enough chatting from me. I'm really excited tonight to introduce our speakers, Dr. Mike Dutton and Helen Dutton, who are founding a new New Hampshire Veterinary Center for Wildlife based on their years of experience running their own veterinary clinic. And they're going to tell you about themselves and what they're doing. So that's enough from me. But take it away, Helen and Mike.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, can you share we're going to share some slides. Thank you for joining us, and we are very excited to share our project with you. So we believe pretty strongly, as I imagine most of you do too, that as New Hampshire citizens, we have a responsibility to care for our natural resources, all our resources, which includes our being good stewards for our wildlife. But as we continue to encroach on their habitat, we are causing more and more injuries and orphaned wildlife. At the same time as injuries are increasing, the number of people who can care for them is decreasing. Just a few years ago, there were as many as 18 licensed wildlife rehabilitators in the state. There is now less than a handful, and some of those are at retirement age. It's not looking good. At the same time, veterinarians are focusing more and more on the lucrative care of dogs and cats, of domestic animals, and their education in vet school does not include wildlife medicine. So for Mike's 38 years as a veterinarian, he provided pro bono care to wildlife as well as Audubon. And we are greatly concerned that as more animal hospitals are owned by large corporations, that pro bono care is just not going to happen. So part of our mission is not only to return as many animals to the wild as possible, but also to be sure that there is another generation of skilled people, rehabilitators, technicians, and veterinarians who are prepared to care for these injured animals.
So Helen briefly talked about corporate veterinary medicine. Just a statistic for you is in 2017, less than 10% of general practice veterinary hospitals were owned by a corporation. That number is now up to 30%. So basically it's tripled in 8 years. And it is one of those things I personally feel the focus of corporate medicine is a little more bottom line as opposed to doing pro bono work. When we were owning the Ware Animal Hospital and the Hopkinton Animal Hospital, the last year, full year that we did that, we were doing about $45,000 worth of pro bono services. That's a big hit to a corporation's bottom line. So that's just sticking some monetary and percentage numbers to that. All right, usually we do this live, and so I asked for a show of hands, and if you want to give an emoji show of hands, great. But how many of you have seen Northwoods Law, which is coming back? Most of the times it's at least half the audience, and I'm going to make that assumption now. We were on Northwoods Law a few years ago, and this is just a picture of that. You can see over on the right-hand side is a person of the camera crew, but what you see on the table is a bobcat that decided to kiss a porcupine. And this bobcat had enough porcupine quills in him is that it was everyone thought, well, let's anesthetize this animal and remove the porcupine quills. And I like this image as part of this because what we're doing now for wildlife is the same level of care that you would expect for your dog or cat. So in this image, we have an anesthesia machine. We have a fluid pump because this animal has an IV and the fluids help maintain the blood pressure during the anesthetic process. We have anesthetic monitoring. I got 3 assistants helping me. You can see the fish and game officer over on the left-hand side. And so the woman sort of off left center. She's at the front of the cat. She's monitoring the breathing pattern in addition to the machines, whether it's a dog, cat, or bobcat. I always tell my anesthesia folks, don't rely on a machine. You got to have the eyes on the pet or the animal. And that's what in this picture Lauren's doing. And so this just sort of shows veterinary medicine for wildlife can be as leading edge as it is for dogs and cats. This eagle, I like this picture. Everyone likes eagles. Who doesn't like eagles? It is one of those things that eagles have made a comeback in the state. In 2017, there were 59 breeding pairs in the state, and in 2024, there's 115 breeding pairs, so that number has really risen. That being said, yep, human-animal interactions occurring a lot more. This eagle was found on the side of the road, wasn't able to fly. first thing we think of is that, you got to love eagles, but in all honesty, they're just scavengers, probably trying to get some roadkill and got clipped by a car. So we're taking an x-ray. And there are certain things that you have to do for each of the wildlife pets. For example, at 10 o'clock in this picture, you can see that the technician sort of has what I call Batman gloves on. I mean, these are actually Kevlar gloves. So any talons from any of these raptors are not going to penetrate through a glove and into the skin.
So what we've outlined are two potential models to help solve this problem with two very different price tags. So I'm going to just walk through briefly what those are and the benefits of each of them. The first one is a centralized statewide facility, which really is Fish and Game's dream. An animal would be brought directly to our wildlife center, which would be in Hooksett. It would be assessed, medically treated if it needed surgery, and it would be rehabilitated in the same location, and then released back to the wild. They're generally released back in the same same vicinity as where they were found. This is ideal situation. Less transport, less handling, which means a whole lot less stress for the animal. The other big benefit of this is that staff and volunteers would come to our location, fulfill their shift, and then get to go home. Right now, most wildlife rehabilitation in the state is done at people's homes. It's done in their garage, it's done in their kitchens, it's done in their backyard. It's 24/7. And it's we believe that decrease in the number of rehabilitators is in large part because this is a 24/7 job. They are generally funding it mostly by themselves, by friends and family, and in some cases, we've heard even by their retirement funds. So that's the ideal situation. The second model is similar to what we have now, which we're calling a distributed care model. And that process looks like this. An animal is brought to a rehabilitator. They assess it. That person brings it to the vet where it's treated, surgery if needed, goes back to the rehabber if necessary, and then it is released to the back to the wild. Again, not ideal, but as I said, there are two very different price tags on this, and we think this is a good alternative. Under both situations, a key piece of our model is that we will be heavy on the education. As I said, Mike did most of the wildlife work in the state, especially when it came to surgery and orthopedic surgery. And we want to distribute that knowledge and skills as widely as possible. So in both models, we would have education for techs, veterinarians, and rehabilitators.
And students, veterinary students, and veterinary technician students.
Yep.
So just as an overview, so getting these animals or returning to the wildlife takes a lot of different skills. So we have a rescue and transport. Typically, we have what we call a good Samaritan. Gee, I found an eagle on the side of the road. We have perhaps a volunteer that works with the rehabilitator or even Fish and Game. Once that animal gets to the rehabilitators are pretty good at triaging things. And there are going to be things that, as a veterinarian, I will never need to see. We have a group of orphaned squirrels that need to be force-fed. Those animals don't need veterinary care. They need nursing care that a rehabilitator can do. These three pictures, the center one, this is a little baby eagle fell out of the nest. Mom didn't come pick it up. A Good Samaritan notified Fish and Game. It got brought to us. You can see Maria Colby, who's a rehabilitator in Henniker, is in this picture. And basically, we're doing a physical exam. And in the end, it was just a cold, tired, hungry little fledgling. Some treatment and back out to the base of the tree. It fell out. Believe it or not, Mom came and picked it back up, and that was confirmed by Fish and Game. Where veterinary care does come in is the picture that's sitting at 7 o'clock, which is this bird got hit by a car broke both its radius and ulna, and that had to be orthopedically repaired. Wing repair in birds, really meticulous work. You need to have both wings to be bilaterally symmetrical. So you need the length the same. You need to make sure there's not an inappropriate tilt to the wing. That leading soft tissue edge on the wing, you have to make sure is not injured, because if it's scarred down, then that wing cannot fully extend. The blood supply to bones in birds is different than mammals, so you have to be very delicate and not disturb too many things while you're doing the surgery. And segue into the picture at 3 o'clock is me repairing a broken bird wing with a stainless steel intramedullary bone pin, which is what the x-ray on the left-hand side shows. There's two of them, both in the radius and ulna. And oh, by the way, you have to not go through the joint, because then you will cause arthritis in the joint and then the bird can't fly. So like I said, it is just very exacting surgery that's needed to be done. Next is rehabilitation. We'll show you some pictures later on of some rehabilitation cages that are up at Wings and Henniker, but these animals need, for some period of time, build up muscle mass, have soft tissue or bone to heal. Gee, if you pick them up in late December, even if they get repaired and healed by, into January, mid-February, are you really going to now put that bird back out in the wild where food supply is really, really sparse? Most of the times, these animals, you're probably holding on to them a little more into spring. So even though they're healthy enough to go, the environmental conditions are not such that you can actually release them. And that just takes a lot of cages and a lot of room. I'll let Helen talk to this one.
Release an animal. Obviously, this is the dream of every wild animal that we injure. And this was a juvenile bald eagle that Mike repaired a broken wing on. And there it goes. It was released back in around Boscawen, where it had been found. And I know some of you have probably recently seen some of the rehabilitated hawks be released from Monadnock or Pack Monadnock. And but again, if you have, you'll probably never forget it. This image and this day has imprinted on me. There he goes.
Yeah, when Helen joked when she came back from this, one of her comments is she thought it'd be like, I don't know, a cartoon, like the bird go out and say, "Thanks, everybody."
Thanks.
No, it was like,
I'm out. I'm
out.
down the river.
I'm out of here.
So in our centralized model, Fish and Game said, the ideal location would be somewhere along the 93 corridor, preferably between Nashua and Concord, because of course that's where most of the injuries are happening. Mike and I were talking, where was the last time you saw a bald eagle? And mine was on 93, around Hooksett. Probably many of you have seen the same thing. We'd love to see them out in the wild, but we often are seeing them near highways. So after talking to several towns, we met a wonderful couple, George and Cheryl Luigi, who have agreed to donate 21 acres on Goffstown Road, which is just a little over 2 miles off of 93. It's an ideal location, both for Fish and Game and Good Samaritans. We have gone through Conservation Committee, Planning Board, and Zoning Board with the town and have preliminary approvals from all of them.
So in the centralized model, as Helen mentioned, we have two options. There's a big price difference between them. Centralized model is the big one. What we're looking at is actually having a veterinary facility. It's about 5,000 square feet. It sounds a lot, but there's actually a garage on it. One of the tenets of designing veterinary facilities, you always have to make sure there's a closed door between the pet or the animal and the outside world. And there are a number of times with some of the rehabbers is they don't have a garage. They're pulling up in their front yard, 2 o'clock, some February morning, and it's like, okay, I need to take this animal out of my car, my truck, and move it into my kitchen. And if that animal gets loose, it's gone. Okay, so the plan with the garage is Good Samaritan staff, Fish and Game, they drive in, we close the garage door, and on the off chance that animal escapes whatever cage or crate it's in, then it's still confined within the garage. In terms of outdoor rehab, pens and buildings and so forth, all these pictures are from Wings up in Henniker. Based on what we know happens in the state, we're looking at large flight cages for the bigger raptors. There is a set of standards. The book's about an inch thick. For an eagle, it's what, 50 by 100?
Mhm.
50 by 100. This particular flight cage actually has a concrete pond in it to train the eagles to fish for their own food again. And there are going to be a number of other outdoor pens. We're looking at doing small mammals. We're looking at doing waterfowl, so geese. We'll do loons. We're going to do mammals, porcupines, skunks, so forth. The little white cages sitting at about 12 o'clock, those are going to be like squirrels, that type of thing. And then in the centralized model, part of the education is there are a number of opportunities, and we used to open up our hospital to veterinary students, both from veterinary colleges. Surprisingly, yeah, we got a couple from Tufts, but I tell you, Midwest, Oklahoma, Purdue, Michigan State, we got more from those folks. And they, during their senior year, they have to do 4 to 6 weeks in private practice, and they wanted to do exotics and wildlife, and we had a very large exotic caseload. And so they would come and do that for that period of time. The veterinary technicians, the veterinary nurses, Great Bay Community College over on the Seacoast, they do a great job. There are only state technician college. And again, there's a 2-week private practice and a 4-week private practice externship they need to know. Bottom line is, this is, if we go with this model, it's in Hooksett. The chances of having affordable, that a student could afford, short-term housing, if not zero, it is really close to zero. And so part of the approvals that we've gone through is actually an on-site residence that will house up to 4 students. We'll consider down the road doing internships. So a veterinary student or who becomes a doctor their first year out, especially if they want to do more education, such as residency or something along those lines, they usually have to do an internship. And at this point, there's not a wildlife residency program out there, but behind the scenes, a bunch of us are working on that to try to get that to work. So again, housing is going to be a component of the centralized model. I'll let Helen talk about this one. This is her passion project.
This is my wish, big wish. As soon as I saw this, I was like, oh, Mike, we have to get one of these built. So this is up in Canada. For some reason, they call it the Big Geesley. We don't know what it means. It's a Canadian thing, maybe. But basically, it's a big building shaped like a donut. Here you go. Here you'll see a raptor flying. And what this does is a couple of things. There are instances when a recovering raptor is flying back and forth in a rectangular building. It doesn't have complete control over its muscles yet, and it will crash into the other end of the building, re-injuring itself. Not ideal. So obviously in this, he just goes around and around. At the same time, probably more importantly, this allows him longer flight times to build up muscle. That's my big wish. It's pretty neat.
Go ahead.
Here's the actual potential site in Hooksett on Goffstown Road. Over on the right, you'll see that actually is Goffstown Road. The driveway goes in down below, goes up to the medical facility, small amount of parking. We don't expect many people. Behind it is the residency, as Mike said, for up to 4 people. Everything that's within that green box is public space. Everything else is off limits. It is only accessible by volunteers and staff. Obviously, we don't want these animals becoming accustomed to humans. So all of this is off limits. A couple things to note here. Where the cursor is right now, that's an avian quarantine area. I believe birds have to be quarantined for, how long is it?
It depends. So Brett had mentioned that there's an avian flu Zoom call later on. This is the main thing that we're worried about. A lot of times it's 48, 72 hours or longer. It's a little dynamic, so whatever the state or the federals are requiring at that time, we have the standalone pen. This is among a bunch of the mammal pens, so we're not worrying about it transmitting to other birds because the flight cages and the bird facilities are on the left-hand side.
The spot that's circled in blue right now are the ponds, 2 separate ponds for, as Mike mentioned, waterfowl, loons, things like that. But also we have to consider beavers, otters, anything that wants to live in the water. Smaller cages in that same area for smaller mammals. And then, as Mike said, over on the left-hand side on the larger piece of property, there's my big Geesley over on the left, 2 large eagle pens, and then a variety of smaller pens. One of the things our architect has done, which is just genius, he's been great to work with. He's made these smaller pens something standard, very simple to build. And our hope is that we could farm it out to high schools and technical schools, maybe have a competition among different organizations to get these built.
This is just the floor plan. And because we are looking at educating the next generation, down at 6 o'clock, you can see in the darker yellow, it said viewing area. And between that and the surgery and that and the treatment area, these walls are actually glass. So if it's 2 or 3 people that need to learn a skill set, we'll have them in the treatment area, we'll have them in the surgery. If it's something that is unique or not that common, and we have a number of people, then they'll be able to be in that viewing area and look in on surgery and treatment. There'll be speakers and microphones and so forth. We'll have rehab, recovery, ICU areas, and we have a little intake area also. And as I mentioned before, we have the garage. There's a variety of equipment. For the most part, this is what you would expect in a contemporary dog-cat hospital. We can do red blood cell counts, white blood cell counts, blood sugar, liver function, kidney function, and so forth. We do have a couple of unique pieces of equipment. One is a blood lead testing machine. We still see lead toxicity due to mostly fishing weights still, and you can sit here and actually take a blood sample, run it through it, and if it's high, usually you're taking an x-ray so you can see the extent of the lead, because lead would show up on an x-ray. There's actually medical therapies to help what's called chelate that lead out. As I mentioned over on the left-hand side, x-ray, ultrasound, those type of things are invaluable. Down at 7 o'clock, again, this is another bird that's anesthetized, and I just want to sort of point out the little blue box that's to the right of me. I'm the person in the blue scrub top. That's actually a ventilator. So fun fact, every day you should learn something new. Fun fact is that birds and reptiles don't have diaphragms. And so when they're anesthetized, you typically, especially if you're doing any internal surgery, you need to ventilate them, and they actually have ventilators that work for these small animals. Human ventilators, they're made for people that, 80 pounds on up. They're not going to work on these small animals. I've used ventilators, believe it or not, on little rats and so forth. And then at 5 o'clock, incubators. A lot of times these animals are just cold. You think about a bird, birds don't have a lot of body fat reserves because they wouldn't fly well. So the goal is to have 6 incubators, which would probably handle the caseload for what we're planning on seeing.
So under actually both models, but especially in the distributed model, we just want to talk a little bit about the education that we plan to provide. We both have really good relationship with Great Bay Community College. They are, as Mike said, they are the only veterinary technician program in the state. And we have had some conversations with them and are continuing to have conversations with them about providing wildlife care programs there. We're also having conversations with both professional associations within the veterinary professions, New Hampshire Veterinary Medical Association and New Hampshire Vet Tech Association, see if we can provide some continuing education for both of those organizations. Also, under the distributed model, again, where care would be provided around the state, not in a centralized facility, there are a number of corporate-owned, or at least groups of animal hospitals where we would hope to be able to provide some hands-on training. And then finally, working with Fish and Game, who've just been wonderful to work with. They are 100% behind this project, to work with them to develop more rehabilitator training. We really think that's one of the key areas of that's missing right now. Not necessarily the training, but having enough rehabilitators. And then we would be providing some financial support to cover certain types of therapy, training, and even equipment. So for example, Mike mentioned the lead testing equipment. Is that the right term?
Yeah.
I'm definitely not a veterinarian.
Yeah. I mean, all these machines, especially something like a lead testing equipment, you would not use it enough that you would, in a dog cat practice, have it on your shelf. And our goal would be to be able to supply this network into animal hospitals with that machine at no cost to them, and get them trained on it and so forth. So these machines would be available wherever we need them to be. Okay, so animals that we're looking at caring for, basically it's all the normal small stuff in New Hampshire. We're not going to do bears. The Killiams already have that covered. We're not going to do any hoof stock, so we're looking at deer, moose, and so forth. The reason why is that just is hundreds of acres, and in discussions with New Hampshire Fish and Game there is what's called the chronic wasting disease, which is this virus particle that causes neurologic signs in hoof stock. These animals can carry it and be contagious without showing signs. And in a roundabout way, there was some doubt that even 5 years down the road, as they were going to allow hoof stock to be rehabilitated anyways. So for us, it actually makes the job a little easier that we have a much smaller group of smaller animals to deal with. So we're looking at raptors, water birds such as loons. Can't forget the little reptiles. I will say over the years, the most common wildlife reptile we saw was a turtle, and the most common injury was trauma. That is a cracked shell. There's a number of ways that you can actually repair cracked shells that are pretty successful now, as long as the wound's not infected. Owls, I like this picture. You can see the right eye is smaller than the left eye. It's been injured, and probably 8 to 10 years ago, this would not be a releasable animal because The current thinking at that time was that owls needed both eyes to hunt well. A number of anecdotal reports and little studies show that's probably not true. So at this point, you would take care of that injured right eye by removing the injured right eye, and then rehabilitate this owl to go back into the wild. And of course, everyone loves eagles, so let's have one more picture of eagles. And then bobcats, another success story. Bobcats are on the rise in the state. We have a couple of trail cams behind our house, and we get bobcats out frequently.
Once every couple of weeks.
Yeah. This bobcat, again, you'll notice this bobcat's right eye is a little smaller. It probably was not running or didn't run fast enough across the road and got clipped by a car. That eye, it had a broken cheekbone. That all healed up. The eye was totally functional, and we set that bobcat free. Again, typically they're released in the area where they're picked up. As mentioned, education, training the next generation is a big component of either model. I like this picture because it shows all the parties involved. So I get to be the gray-haired old guy at 3 o'clock. The woman to my right is Dr. Peel, a former associate, loves exotic animals. The learning curve from exotic animals to wildlife is much smaller than from dog cat to wildlife. And again, she's just learning the unique aspects of dealing with the veterinary aspects of wildlife. The gentleman in blue, he's a veterinary assistant. Again, he's got the Batman gloves on, but nurses and technicians, animal assistants, they also need training. Putting in IVs, you put them in a different place than you put them on a dog or a cat. So it's things like fluid therapy, monitoring, x-ray positioning, and so forth. And the woman at 7 o'clock, this is Maria Colby up at Wings and Henniker. She sort of represents in this picture that rehabilitation component that we're planning on doing. So the woman on the right, Dr. Richard, a former associate of mine, just to reiterate what Helen said, is the veterinary colleges really are not training the students in wildlife medicine because it's such a small percentage, is that Dr. Richard, great veterinarian, but she had done 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of veterinary school, did 2 separate 1-year internships and a 3-year residency at Tufts in exotic pet medicine. So 13 years of college. We had a raptor, I can't remember what species, come in with a broken wing. And I said, well, why don't you go ahead and fix it? And I'll be here if you have any questions. And she's like, I've never had to do orthopedic surgery on a bird before. So 13 years of college just shows you that veterinary colleges are not dealing with this. And I don't, in all honesty, it's such a small niche. I don't expect that they would ever change on that. We also, again, this is Dr. Peel, former associate. We also do complete physicals. And again, retinas of birds are different than mammals. For example, something like a peregrine falcon, they actually have 2 focal areas in their retina. One is short vision, one long vision. That's why, 300 yards up in the sky, they can see that mouse. 10 to 15 years ago, probably the only time we checked the retinas are on birds that had obvious facial trauma. Now we know things like detached retinas, lens problems and whatnot are actually much more common. So they go ahead and they get a full physical, again, like your dog or cat. This is a baby bobcat. This is Dr. Gagney, a former associate. She's actually a board certified feline specialist. She works down in the Salem area now, and she loves cats. And she was in an exam room doing some sort of cat exam, and we said, well, let's play a trick on Jordan. So we said, hey, Dr. Gagney, we got a kitten out back, and we just need we need some help doing a physical on it. And her eyes just shone, and she smiles. She says, I'll be right there. And she comes, walking back into treatment, and she sees the bobcat, and I love it. She didn't skip a beat. She said, oh, okay, it's a kitten. And she went ahead and did a physical. This baby just sort of needed, nothing was broken, and just needed a few days of rehabilitation before we could get it back into the wild.
So where we are with our project right now, as we said, there are two very different price tags, which we haven't shared yet, actually.
No, we haven't.
The ideal situation has a $6 million project, is $6 million price tag to it, and that doesn't include the residents. So for the rehab pens and the medical facility, it's $6 million.
Well, the site work is $1 million. So that's 6 million.
Yeah.
$1 million of it is the site work.
Right.
And all the pens are 1.2,
Yep.
$1.3 million.
Right. But as we said, when we talk to different organizations, we have a lot of support. We just need more of the financial support. As I mentioned, the Hampshire Fish and Game is 100% behind this. They've even come to meetings with us. They're just really supportive. Anytime we have a question, hey, what do you think about this? They are right there. They've been great. The Wildlife Heritage Foundation, you may know of them. They are the nonprofit arm of Fish and Game. They also are like, oh, this is a fantastic project. It's really needed. We're 100% behind you. As I mentioned, Mr. and Mrs. Luigi, they've been wonderful and said, you know what? We are willing to donate this land. S&P Architecture, they have provided all of their services at no charge. It's probably about $40,000 worth of work. They've just been wonderful to work with. And they've even hooked us up with some other cabinetry. Yeah, that was going to be ruined or destroyed from another project of theirs. And they said, they reached out to that owner and said, hey, we know a good cause. Could they take that cabinetry? So they've been great. The town of Hooksett has been wonderful. From the very first meeting with them, they said, even if you don't end up in Hooksett, we are here to help you in any way that we can. So great support along the way. Here's our contact information. If you'd like to sign up for our newsletter or to make a donation, you can use that QR code, or you can find it on our website. And we can then open it up to questions. Brett or Susie, I'm not sure who's in charge.
Wow, thank you so much. That is truly an incredible project that you've got. It's thoughtful in every detail. And someone in the chat said, your visions are amazing. So exciting that you're doing this. New Hampshire is so lucky to have you both. I really could not agree more. This project is, every slide you introduced some new, incredible, thoughtful detail that hadn't even occurred to me. And then when you said it, it was like, yes, of course. Truly, truly amazing. So you've got all of we're behind you.
Great.
There are some, and we will send this link out when we send. It might take us a little while to get the recording up on YouTube, but when we send it out, we will include the link to your site and the place where folks can donate, and also we'll include that in the YouTube caption as well, so we can hopefully help get you some more support. A lot of the questions that were posed were already answered in the course of your talk, although there are a few, and feel free to put some more in if you for folks still have questions. But I like Michelle's question, so I'll start with that. Can you tell us more about your personal story and how you came to envision this incredible project and to make it happen?
So I always start with this one because it's the odd moment. Helen and I are high school sweethearts. Anyways, so she went to Vermont, I went to Michigan State, came back, and my first job was Hudson Animal Hospital in Hudson, New Hampshire, and we used to do Benson's Animal Park when Benson's Animal Park was still there, which meant we did a lot of exotic pets, and we had a huge group of wildlife rehabilitators that used us. And after 6 years, we decided to start our own practice. And we moved up to where and started that, and the wildlife rehabilitators sort of followed us. And it just grew from there. And so the personal story is we got really good at it, word spread, we saw more, and we stayed good at it. So that's the personal story. And
Yeah, as
now
far
we
as-
retired a year ago, and it's like,
I said, why not?
why not? There's this need, and we have the experience and the skill set, and if not us, who?
And that really is the why, the reason why, because we could just retire and, I don't know, do what retired people do. But we keep coming back to the question, if not us, then who? Someone has to do this. We met a former police officer from up north, and he said because there's not care available up there, if they find an injured animal up there, it's euthanized in the field. We don't want that to be happening across the state.
Yeah, thank you so much. You say you're retired, but this is a labor of love, but work nonetheless. And you're really digging into it, and it's amazing. There was a question you didn't mention small birds. Someone earlier on was asking about the different species you would work with, and you covered most of them. But what about smaller, like songbirds? Do you envision working with those as well?
It's
Yep.
probably the largest mammal we would do.
Mammal.
Okay. Mammal would be like a fisher cat. Honestly, they're nasty son of guns. I'm hoping there's not many of them. And in terms of the birds, it's pretty much any bird. So if you take that as a maximum, anything smaller.
Got it.
Including
Songbirds.
Yeah, or a hummingbird.
Or a hummingbird.
Hummingbird. Melanie's wondering if you envision a public education component, like for school groups, whether it's, I don't know if she's thinking outreach, like going to schools and talking about your work, or maybe inviting them to your site.
That is probably not on the short-term plan. Going to schools and whatnot, probably doable. Part of the approval process of Hooksett is they're very concerned because that is a curvy, fast road. They're pretty adamant that we're not hosting any large groups there just from a parking perspective and getting in and out of the facility. So medium, long term, we'll address it when we get there.
Okay, Helena is asking if you would be able to make use of folks who have masters or PhDs in wildlife rehabilitation, either as staff or as volunteers, paid
Yes.
staff or volunteers.
Short answer, yes.
Okay. So Helena, if that's
Please
you,
go to the website, sign up for the newsletter, shoot us an email.
excellent. And Susie was wondering about collaborative programming or training with the Tufts Wildlife Center, cross state boundaries.
Yeah.
Yes. I've had, and this was a few years ago, I've had a couple of conversations with them. Unfortunately, most of the rehabilitation, even in Massachusetts, is relatively fragmented. So I think there's more conversations that need to happen to move that forward and even deal with rehabilitator and centers in Massachusetts that are not Tufts, or even in Maine, the one up in York.
If we are able to proceed with the internship and residency program, that would definitely be a project that we could work on with Tufts, and would love to work on with Tufts.
Yep.
A few people are asking about rodenticide poisoning. I know you mentioned it a little bit with the blood testing equipment that you are planning to have in your lab, but is there anything else that you can share about that? Is it something that you'd be able to provide for rehabbers who are not working on site with you?
Yeah, I mean,
anything else you can share?
Not to get in the medical weeds too much, most of the rodenticides end up attacking vitamin K, which is needed for the clotting mechanism, and you can do blood clotting times. And if those are prolonged and the symptoms of the animals are typical for rodenticide, most of the times you're looking at vitamin K supplementation as the cure, the antidote. Very rarely will you get a mammal within 45 minutes of it chewing the rodenticide like you would your pet dog. So it's already been absorbed. So a lot of the gastrointestinal stuff, making them vomit, having GI protectants, whatnot, that boat has sailed. So typically, if you do the exam, they're anemic, they have something called petechiation, you run a blood clotting panel, the times are too long. Usually you're starting off with vitamin K. So that's a pretty straightforward machine.
One of our goals under the decentralized model, if we can't have a centralized model, is that we want to be able to support the rehabilitators as much as possible. As I said, we know they are using their own funds, their friends and families, their retirement funds to buy supplies, equipment that they need, and to care for the animals. So in any way that we can support them, we are open to those conversations. Absolutely.
Wonderful. All right, there's a bunch of questions that have come in. I'll just maybe do a few more. A quick one is Pam wants to know, what about coyotes? Are they too big, or do you anticipate treating them?
They're too big. I
Too
mean,
big.
from a centralized point of view, again, you're going to need quite a number of acres that are fenced. And, you know, the land, you saw the picture, the land is 21 acres, but honestly, only about 12 of it's really usable. So that would be too big.
And Jane is wondering about if you've reached out to any kind of corporate sponsors for funding, or kind of big picture funders, if you've been able to connect with anyone, and maybe she has ideas for you. I don't know.
Yes, yes, we have. The problem is that most of those grants, they want a track record. We're brand new, and a lot of them don't do capital expenditures. So they're not going to, you know, shoot us $1 million to build a building. So we're in a position where we don't have a track record, and we're really asking for a different bucket of money than most of the grants and so forth would supply.
All right. So I think there's a few of you who had suggestions and ideas that I would encourage you. You've got their email addresses to maybe reach out directly, but we'll end, I think, with Michelle's really great question, which is beyond donating money, which is obviously a need and something that we can do if we have anything to spare. How else can people and organizations help you with this project?
Tell everybody you know.
Yeah, spread the word.
Spread the word.
I mean, if we could get 6 million people to send us $1 a piece, so we're looking at spreading the word.
Great. Well, we're happy to help with that. We thank you so much for your vision and your commitment to that vision and everything that you're doing to help our wild neighbors. It's just something that is near and dear to everybody's heart, I'm sure, who is on this call, and everyone at the Harris Center. So you've got our moral support, and hopefully we'll be able to send some more folks your way as well. So thank you so much. And thanks everyone for joining us, and get out there and spread the word.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you for having us. It was a pleasure.
Yep. Thanks.
Bye all.
Bye.